Okay, well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Festival and Space Makers Network. We're excited to have Jordan Kilbourne today, DJ producer known as Kilbourne, and the founder of Cimmerian Records. Kilbourne has carved out a distinct role in the underground bass music world with a sound that blends industrial textures, dark atmospheres, and heavy low end pressure. Designed for powerful sound systems and late night dance floors, his productions move through the edges of industrial bass, time, and experimental dubstep, creating music that feels cinematic, ominous, and physical and visceral at the same time. Alongside his work as an artist, Jordan launched Cimmerian Records, a label focused on darker, more forward thinking bass music. Through the label, he's stepped into the role of curator and community builder, helping platform artists who are pushing the boundaries of heavy underground electronic music. In many ways, his career so far reflects a path of a lot of artists aspire to, but few execute well, evolving from DJ to producer to label architect, shaping not just music, but the ecosystem around it. So today we're going to chat with Jordan and explore how he found his way into underground bass culture, how he approaches DJing, production, and the philosophy behind Cimmerian Records. Welcome,
Great.
Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the kind words. That was really lovely. Happy to be here today to talk with you. And yeah. I mean, where I got into DJing as a whole would have been a very tight word of mouth party called Secret Beach. For anybody that's heard of it, I won't give any details on that just because we're not allowed to do that. But yeah, deeply rooted in the West Coast scene out here in BC, and that was kind of my first introduction to electronic music as a whole, raving as a whole, the whole festival scene, and really kind of sent me off the deep end, ignited the fire, and created the passion. And then from there, I was able to slowly kind of dive into different sounds and different realms of electronic music, and kind of hone in where I felt I resonated the best. And that, I try not to put myself in a box. Still, creatively, I span many genres, but I definitely, my heart beats to slow bass music, right? Stuff that's not necessarily aggressive. It's not abrasive even. A lot of it's meditative, pulling a lot of organic textures and a lot of influence from hip hop and grime. And yeah, trying to carve out, my own little space in that world between myself and the label. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I actually started the label during COVID because previous to that, I was creating events. And obviously during COVID, we weren't able to do that. So I needed a way to kind of funnel that creative energy elsewhere. And so I started the label, and yeah, it really just kind of took off. It's been really enjoyable to work with some of my favorite artists that have inspired me and put them out on the label, and also be able to kind of represent and push upcoming artists that I think deserve the spotlight and should have a platform, for their art. And so that's been really cool. And yeah.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate um, people who one of the reasons why we have you in here is because you're not just making music, you're also in a sense creating space for
Yeah.
people, and that really shines through. And so it's something that we really appreciate in you. And thanks for outlining some of that origin of Secret Beach, and which location shall remain unnamed. Um, and I feel that vibe, man, because I come from the Carrington Bay, so it's a similar from a
Exactly.
similar cloth.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, let's switch over to the craft of DJing a little bit.
Sure.
Um, what do you think separates a technically good DJ from a truly great one?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest piece for me when it comes to a set that really pulls me in is the proper balance between tension and release, right? A lot of the time, people are so gung ho on playing, maybe the hottest tracks or a full set of bangers, right? But without proper tension and release, the those bangers that do come in, you're not able to enjoy them as much because you haven't had any space to breathe, right? And so I think, like, for me, like a great DJ is somebody that creates like a proper journey from start to end. It's not you're not maintaining that exact same energy levels all the way through. Like I'm being taken on a proper flow. And I think that a lot of DJs overlook this. They want to get people hyped up, they want to get people excited, and that's important. But you got to give space for people to breathe as well, right? And it just emphasizes those drops when they come, right?
Yeah, the tension and release was a term that came up a few times when we were researching what you do, and that's a really great way of putting it. And I think lots of guests who have come and spoken so far on the interviews here have reflected a similar sentiment to
Okay.
what you're explaining, and the way you explain it makes a lot of sense. So, some DJs are planning every song, every mix. Some DJs are more improvising. Um, to properly achieve that tension and release, is there signals that you see that might shift how you're when you're in DJ mode, where your set may go, or how quickly you're mixing in, or how fast your transitions are? Are there any signals that you see in the crowd live that might change the way your set will go?
For sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in kind of putting all your energy into every performance, right? No matter the size of the room, no matter the amount of people. So I always plan something, whether or not I start at the beginning and make it all the way to the end of that planned set is another thing. But I always have something planned. Often because of that, I have several folders and sets created of different pockets of music, and it allows me personally, when I notice, for example, let's say I'm in a section of playing something that's a little slow, and I notice that the crowd's starting to get a little lulled out. Maybe let's say the next 10 minutes I had planned we're still a little slow. Well, I'm not going to stay slow if I notice that the crowd's starting to get a little sleepy, right? I'm going to try and bring it up. So in that regard, I'd probably try and float to something a little more higher energy, or vice versa, right? If you notice people, I think there's a hard balance trying to find as a DJ of playing what you want to play and then reading the room at the same time, right? Because obviously, sometimes what you're playing just doesn't resonate with the room, right? And sometimes you have to adapt. And I don't think that has to mean breaking out of yourself as an artist. You know what I mean? Like leaving the sounds but being versatile within those sounds, to adapt to how people are in the room, I think is important. And yeah.
Yeah, putting yourself, I guess it kind of segues nicely to, before getting into the production side, into when you are being booked as a DJ, to sort of understand what situation you're going to be putting yourself into,
Yeah.
and will you find yourself in a position where what you truly love will not be received well, therefore, or perhaps for me or for anyone as a curator, is this person being put into a slot that makes sense for what they're playing, and to try to, as a young DJ, medium DJ, whatever, maybe a DJ without management, to make sure that you're have a list of questions that you ask a promoter, sort of
Yeah.
to make sure that you don't find yourself in a situation where you're trying to play your beautiful deep music, and everyone wants like
Yeah.
such and such remixes or something.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I think it's important to do a little bit of research for sure before you go and play any gig, right? Just get an idea of like the room of people you're going to be playing to, the atmosphere, the environment, the kind of vibe that maybe that scene, if it's a scene that you've never played before, just diving and this vibe that I'm talking about doesn't even have to be different genres, even within bass music, there's so many different vibes to touch upon, right? So even just jumping between those in one genre, right? But knowing that, okay, maybe I'm going to a crowd who way more prefers the deep end, right? It's a really heady crowd. The people are all there. They really love this music. You might be able to go on deeper off the deep end and play some of those little more obscure tracks that people that aren't necessarily in that realm of music will enjoy themselves, right? And so it's just kind of like you said. I think either asking the promoter questions or just doing your own research, right? Like into the scene itself, you're gonna go tap into, right?
Yeah, get yourself in a position where you'll be able to shine at your best, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Well, so moving over to production, because that's a big part of what you do. I kind of, I'm always mystified by, I look at a painting or something and I think, where did they start here? Like, did they do the brush stroke over here? Like, did they sketch it out
Yeah.
beforehand? So the question is, like, what's your process there? Like, when you're making a song, do you often start with drums or the bass or atmosphere? Is it a feeling, or is there a
Yeah.
way for you to kind of walk the listener through that process?
I'll be honest, I've got quite the ADHD brain, so my creative process sometimes is all over the place. Kind of where I start ranges based on the inspiration I guess I'm feeling in the moment. Sometimes I get inspired by a specific sound or melody, sometimes it's a vocal, and sometimes, which actually happens a lot of the time, is I'll start by just kind of drawing out drums and bass and create a beat and then go from there. But I will say that from a production standpoint, doing your drums and bass first isn't necessarily the best idea. It's a lot harder to create and match a melody to some already created bass and everything. You know what I mean? But for me personally, I really enjoy and I spend a lot of time on focusing on the kind of cleanliness and the production level of the bass and drums, right? And it's so important in the music that I do. But yeah, I think it totally depends on where I'm pulling that inspiration from that day, right? Whether it's I've been to an event and I heard something I liked and I can't get, that sound out of my head, or, there's an artist right now that's really inspiring me and, that's a sound that I want to chase. And so in that case, I might start trying to write some melodies and with inspiration to that, making it its own thing. But I think that's one thing that some people they don't take. You don't want to take full inspiration in terms of like copycatting somebody else's work, but I think it's really important in taking inspiration from other music, right? All artists take inspiration from somewhere else, right? Whether it's another artist or even, if you're painting, it could be the world or nature or anything, right? But the inspiration often, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, I often wonder how much of our inspiration or the muse, the things that are serve as muses for us, how much of that is what percentage is conscious and what percentage is picked up subconsciously in terms of our influences, the things we saw when we were little,
Yeah.
subtle colors, shapes, whatever, and things that kind of influenced our brain at a young age, and how much of our creativity um, comes from outside absorption of things versus
Yeah.
some from the stars or from deep within. Like, is it possible to pull something original out, or is it simply just a different complex
Yeah.
combo of inspirations from everything else that kind of make what it is? And
It's a
I
really
don't know,
good conversation, actually. I think Rick Rubin touches on a really good interview about that and about the fact that he doesn't believe. I think it's Rick Rubin and Huberman. I don't know if you've seen Professor Huberman. He does the Huberman Lab podcast and talks about like science-based tools and stuff. Anyways, they sit down and it's a really brilliant conversation because it's from with Rick Rubin, who's very music and art focused, and then it's Huberman, who's like very science and fact based. And so the questions that are asked and everything that go back and forth are really good. But they touch upon that is like that if you can even pull that artistic like straight without some source of inspiration, right? And whether, like you said, that's unconscious or consciously, like that inspiration is coming from something, right? You're like, it's got to come from something. So it's a really, anybody that hasn't watched that or any of Rick Rubin's interviews or talks, I highly suggest it. He's like an
Yeah,
absolute guru.
I do recall a great clip of his where he's like, I don't have any technical ability.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this. And then
Yeah.
and he says something like, he's like, well, why are you who you are? And he's like, he says something to the effect, I'll probably butcher it, but like, I know exactly what I like,
Yeah.
or
No, that's
something to
right.
that
Yep.
effect. And
Yep.
truly, yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. Okay, I almost wanted to kind of go backwards a bit because I was about to start talking about creativity and how music production might be changing with AI and the
Oh yeah.
questions of creativity and where creativity comes from. And some people say it comes from God, some people say it comes from the earth, and that conversation gets even more contextualized and complex when enters AI music production,
Certainly.
and it does challenge AI itself on many subjects of human.
Yeah.
It does challenge what we hold as valuable in ourselves. But I do want to digress away from that, back to something a little more specific, which is back to the production in you and to someone who's listening right now, um, who's just starting off in production. Like, what was something that you feel like now you understand a lot about it that just took you a while to understand as you were starting, that maybe you can help skip someone ahead a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I think a really big piece that a lot of people seem to skip over right away is mixdown. You know, I think learning and starting mixdowns from like the start of your tune and learning at the beginning is
So
like
can you explain
crucial.
mixdown, the term
Yeah,
mixdown?
yeah. So mixdown is like a mixdown is essentially mixing down your tunes so that all of the sounds are fitting equally in the space the way you want them to, right? Nothing is competing with each other. So that way, when you go to send your track to a mastering engineer, you know, it'll be mixed down to, let's say, -6 decibels. So that gives them the headroom to master it and boost all the levels they need to boost and bring it up, right? But the thing is that if you wait all the way to the end of your track to mix down, the work is immense. And a lot of the time, if you were to just start the mix down from the beginning of your tune, you know, every time you bring in a song or a track or a sound, you know, you mix down that sound. The end is a lot less worse, right? There's not as much work, but also as you're progressing with your song, you know, you'll start to notice right away whether or not something's causing issues, right? And then you're not trying to dive in at the end to figure out where this frequency clash or this issue is coming from, right? Because you're hearing it right away rather than, you know, you put all your sounds in and at the end you're like, man, I can't figure out where this problem is coming from. I can hear the resonance, I can hear that there's a problem, but I've got 50 sounds in this song and I can't figure out which ones are causing the problem, right? But if you do that right from the beginning, then those problems, they show up right away, and often they will, you know, as you're adding songs, if you're mixing down or not. But the problem is if you're not mixing down, things continue to sound a little muddy, right? And so it's harder to
Yeah.
pick
So
out
for
those finesse, you know, the finesse of those sounds, right? So I think that has improved my production a lot. And even another big thing is just getting down and writing out an idea once a day. You know, not even doesn't even have to be full songs. Like just sit down for half an hour, write down a sketch, and put it away, and then you know, the next day start another one, and then at the end of a week or two, go back, and if anything's worth something, you know, start the tune. But if not, then the worst thing that happened was you got a bunch of practice, right? And yeah, I think that helped a lot for me.
That's cool. The mix down thing is really interesting. It's sort of like, you want the hi-hat kind of up into the side. You want the down here, you want the sounds to be separate enough that when someone is mastering, they have the ability to control all those sounds to help make it all really good. And I think that's very sound advice.
And I think it
Um,
just it develops your understanding better of how those sounds all play a role in the song, right? Because I think a lot of people in the beginning when they're making music, they're just throwing sounds in there and they don't really understand what those sounds are doing or how they're filling the space or how they're interacting with each other, right? And when you start paying attention to the mix down more, you start to kind of understand the relationship between all those sounds, right? And how the song's coming to be. And I think that will help everybody's production in the beginning for sure.
mhm. And then at the end there, you sort of mentioned something to the effect of, um, being able to get your ideas down and don't get caught somewhere and being able to sort of flow back to things. And I'm sure everyone has a big variety of ways that they capitalize on their own creativity. I know for me, as sometimes I have to just go and like have a bath or something, and suddenly this thought of, oh, I can do those two things together to do with something else, not to do with music. And sometimes those creative thoughts come when your mind is very relaxed, and to
Yeah.
be able to capitalize on those moments when that creativity is flowing. Is there ways that you can catch an idea, like a recording device or something you can, any way that you kind of, when you're having an idea, but you're not in the studio and you want to hold on to that vibe, is there a way that you're able to record it for yourself or something?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I have a Zoom recorder, right? A recorder. I don't obviously carry it around everywhere with me because it's a little bulky. So if there's ever anything, you can easily record a clip on your phone, and whether that's even a usable clip, but even just sometimes to like capture the idea, right? Like you said, because I think that's important for anybody in any field is like noting down your thoughts and your ideas and everything, right? Because even if you think you're going to remember by the time you go to open up Ableton or whatever, you're going to forget. And I can promise you that because you're going to have thought about a million other things and then you're going to get in the moment. You're going to be like, yeah, no, it's gone, right? And sometimes those ideas are priceless, you know what I mean? And so I think that just writing everything down as it comes to you, whether you use it or not in the end, is not a big deal. But worst case, you took a second to write something down. Best case, it's $1 million idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, even that, if at very least hit record on your own phone and hey, bada bam 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 bam,
Yeah,
that really, hey, that tell yourself what that thought was. Try to figure out a way to sort of retain that inspiration. So,
100%.
Jordan, let's switch over to Cimmerian Records. Um, was there a gap in the scene that made you want to start Cimmerian?
Yeah, I think that there wasn't a proper platform in BC and Canada as a whole that was kind of pushing this music, and I noticed that there were a lot of Canadian. I mean, our scene, especially on the West Coast, is really heavy on the bass culture, and there's an incredible amount of talent and producers that I felt were there's the few that break through and they get out to those international labels and everything, but I seen that a lot of people were being overlooked being up in Canada. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't everybody's first thought, and it seemed like it was pretty hard for people to break through the mold and like get on those other platforms. So my intention was to be able to kind of put those artists in the spotlight and hopefully, open up their opportunities and open them up to other platforms and other audiences. And it's been pretty good. It's been a great experience. Even we just put out our fourth various artist compilation with 11 artists from all over the world, from Europe and the UK and Canada, and the first time we did that, it was kind of cool to watch all of these artists then connect, and then all of a sudden after the release, they're starting to put music out together, and so which is relationships that weren't happening before, right? And so it's been in the same way that I love to do events is facilitating connections for people, right? And to be able to do that is great.
I hear you loud and clear, man. I've enjoyed over the years myself having two artists that most likely didn't know each other before an event, and then they're running a tour or
Yeah.
collaborating the following year. And it definitely is one of those parts of the work where pats on the back and high fives really do pay the bills. They pay
Yeah.
their they pay the bills of feeling proud and inspired by helping to make those connections. So
Yeah, totally.
so when people are putting demos into you, what are some of the things that you're listening for when you first listen to someone's demo?
Yeah, I would say actually this is going to be a big piece of suggestion or advice for anybody submitting to a demo or to a label with a demo is that proofread your email before you're going to send it in. I can't explain like the amount of demos I've received where people, are spelling the label's name wrong, my name wrong. They're not giving me any information. Sometimes they're just sending a link, like send it doesn't have to be a paragraph about who you are as an artist or anything, but give a little bit of context. Make sure that the label you're submitting to, you're spelling the name right, or most of the time they're not following the SoundCloud or the socials or anything like that. Like, so if you're not supporting us and and a lot of the times people are coming to claim, they're like huge fans of the music, and then you take a look and they're not even following, anything. You're like, well, that doesn't it doesn't seem like you're too big of a fan. So I think like on a surface level, that's really important, how you present yourself. In terms of what I'm listening to I'm pretty picky, and especially more so nowadays as I'm going, like I'm getting a little more picky. I'm very specific on the vibe and sound that I'm trying to push on the label. And so yeah, like for me specifically for Cimmerian Records, we're like focusing more on the like deep end of bass music and dubstep and sound system culture stuff that's um, sultry and deep and melodic. Like we just put out our fourth compilation album, Cimmerian Volume 4, and this one was a bit of a different direction from before. It's focused on kind of jazzy, melodic, emotionally driven, kind of rootsy, dubby dubstep, and yeah. So I just think that you know, focusing on if you're submitting to a label, like listen to their catalog first. Listen to the music that they're already putting out, because a lot of the time I'm getting submissions that don't fit in the catalog, right? They don't make sense. If you were to listen to it alongside everything else, it stands out on its own, completely out of the way, right? And so I think doing your research of where you're submitting your music is important because um, yeah, I mean, just for the likeliness of getting your music picked up, obviously. But yeah, I think that that big part of just presenting yourself well is good. Like sometimes I don't even feel like listening to a demo, if it doesn't, if it's presented poorly and there's, spelling my name wrong and the label's name wrong and, stuff like that, right? So,
Yeah, making it difficult. I go through tons of submissions for festivals, and yeah, it can be. Sometimes it feels personal. It's like, hey, you're wasting my time. But obviously, the submitter doesn't think it that way. They're just doing whatever it is they're doing. Maybe they're doing a whole bunch all at once after work or something. But
yeah,
from the person receiving the information, it feels like, why isn't this link working? Or it's like, why are you wasting my time? And it can, although it isn't personal, can feel personal for people like yourself or myself when
yeah.
we are on the other side of hundreds and hundreds of submissions.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
Cimmerian Records, your music, what you do is thoughtful and deep, and expecting people to take the time and do the research
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. And I know, I would say, not like purist in a bad sense, in a negative sense, but sort of you're very pure in what you're looking for musically, but it sounds
yeah,
like you also care about other things about who joins your label as well, like
yeah,
thoughtfulness and things like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I think it just comes down to caring enough to present yourself at your best, right? And if you don't care enough to take an extra 3 minutes for your email to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a good way, that just doesn't tell me that you care enough about what you're doing, right? And I'm here. I don't do this, don't do it to make money. I don't do anything like I work a full-time job. This is totally a passion project. I just love doing it. And at the end of the day, like you said, like I care more about supporting good people and people who care a lot about what they're doing than the hype, right? And so, yeah.
Well, thanks, man. That's great. Um, let's jump over to the bass music ecosystem a little bit. And I guess let's kind of go to not to the negative. Let's make sure it comes back around to a positive. But is there anything in the like the bass music industry, or maybe not bass music industry, but the electronic industry at large, and you could be quite broad stroke if you want, that you think is broken?
Yeah,
Eh,
I think it's a good question. I mean, I think that broken. That's a good question to ask. I think that well, if I talk about bass music in particular, I think that a lot of people just assume they don't like bass music because the surface level of bass music they hear is aggressive and maybe screechy, or it's just like not enjoyable, abrasive, and there's lots of people that love that stuff, and I'm not here to hate on anybody that loves that stuff. That's totally, I'm whatever calls to you. But I think that puts a bad name out for the bass community, and it's just so much more than that. And specifically dubstep. Dubstep's name kind of got really Americanized and kind of dragged through the mud with the whole Skrillex era and all of the like kind of Americanized screechy dubstep, right? But real dubstep comes from like sound system culture in the UK. It comes from, reggae dub roots where they used to go and set up sound systems in alleys and spin slow music and smoke a bunch of weed, and so it's always been meant to be a more like kind of heads down music, right? But it got taken in the totally opposite direction. And obviously, there's still a heavier side to, you know, traditional dubstep and the deep end of dubstep. But I think that unfortunately, what it's done is created a stigma around the genre, right? And people don't give it a chance because they know it for the surface level. And I think that's electronic music as a whole. For anybody that's not in the electronic scene, there's the surface level of music that they hear, and that's all they associate it with. But there's so much more to it than that, right? And unfortunately, we're as a society, we gear things towards the mainstream like that, and it picks up easy. And I think that dubstep itself is going through like a huge resurgence, especially over here on the West Coast, where it's a lot more quality stuff is coming out, and I think a lot more people are being open up to the fact that bass music isn't just about aggressive bass in your face. There's so much more to it. There's the sultry end and the deep sexy end, right? And there's stuff that's more worldly and tribally, and there's just so much different vibes across it that I think that anybody that says they don't like it just haven't quite given it the chance, right? And I think the thing with electronic music these days is it used to be so specific, right? So specific to the drum machine, even to what the genre was. But these days, every genre pulls influence from everywhere else, right? So there's so much hybrid music going on all over the place that yeah, I think, which is really good. I think it's great, and the evolution of that has been awesome to see. But yeah,
Cool. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I've really been enjoying where you're coming from and your responses, and I think there's a value in this conversation. I think people listening to it will get something from it. To sort of expand a little bit, because I know you're a busy guy, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Um, I guess I got a few different questions that are under the category of like wisdom and reflection, and I guess I'll just say, if you could send a message to yourself 10 years ago, is there anything that you would tell yourself that might be valuable to people listening?
wow, yeah, that's a really good one too. That's a good question, Ben. 10 years ago to myself, hmm.
Take your time, man.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so much I'd love to tell myself from 10 years ago, but I'm trying to relate it to this year. I think there's, yeah. I think honestly, like the biggest thing that I have to say, like if to me 10 years ago is just finding the balance in this scene. You know, I think it can be really easy to get sucked up into the scene, into partying, into how you present yourself, into you know why you're doing this and why you're going to these things. And you know, I think in the beginning it gets really exciting, all everything new, and you know the scene. And I think that it's just important to not forget, you know, why you're doing this in the first place, right? You know, why, what the intentions behind whether you're making music, whether you're attending shows, going to festivals, you know, just don't let it be. I don't think it should be about the partying as a whole. You know, party, have fun, obviously, let it complement your experience, but don't let it take over that experience, right? And don't let that experience be about that, right? And
Mhm.
I think that that's something that I've come to realize over 10 years. And, you know, I'm at a point for myself where, you know, I'm not partying like I used to, you know, and I just think that it's really easy to get distracted by everything, right? And there's so much beauty and art in the scene and so many good people. And I think that it's really easy to kind of miss a lot of that, you know, in depth, at least when you're being distracted by everything else, right?
Yeah, no, I hear that. Those are important words for sure. I think there's something important about being at the after parties sometimes for those deeper connections that are made on the giggling on
Yep,
the couch or whatever.
for
I
sure.
think it is important to be at those at the after parties as well,
Yeah,
because that's when sounds are developed. That's when tastemakers are created, and I
yeah,
think there's a balance there for sure.
yeah,
Some of the emerging music and the emerging creativity is sparked in some of those late night
yeah,
environments.
definitely.
But like you said, it's a balance, and everyone is an individual and needs to use their time wisely in this life. I think every older fellow will say back to their past selves, use your time wisely, son,
Yeah,
because some of that time is kind of wasted, and you need to
yeah,
try to maximize your time here on planet Earth.
yeah, totally.
So, thanks, man. You have a bunch of stuff coming up, like you have a tour coming up.
Yep.
What's Tell us a little bit about the tour.
Yeah, for sure. So my upcoming tour is kind of will be technically my debut Canada tour. Obviously, I've played throughout Canada a bunch, but I've never actually done a Canada tour. So yeah, I've got a good amount of stops coming up. It's tied to my upcoming release that'll be probably out at the end of April. It's called Night Theory, and so that's the name of the tour. And yeah, I'm excited to join you, which I guess we'll announce properly tomorrow. But yeah, join you at the Waverly in Cumberland. We've got shows in Montreal, Vancouver, Victoria, Qualicum, Powell River, um, in Calgary. First stop is Calgary at the end of the month here, and that's actually tying into a release on Dark Matter Threads itself. So that's a label out of Calgary that you know runs they design artwork, and then they design clothing for the artwork, and then the two tracks will come out alongside that clothing drop, and so you can only get the music if you purchase the clothing. It's kind of like a special limited release thing. So that'll be coming out with that. But yeah, the tour itself is a collection of 4 tunes, 2 solo tunes, and 2 collab tracks with 2 different sets of artists from the UK. And yeah, I'm super excited to get these tunes out. I've been sitting on a couple of them for a little bit, and I've just been really trying to focus in on making the release cohesive. And yeah, I think it's going to be a big year for me. I got a lot of music ready to come out, and a lot of music coming down the pipeline for the year. So I'm really excited to get on this tour and start sharing it all. And yeah,
Great. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, we're excited to have you at the Waverly, and we just had a really 400 plus people having a great time to pure bass music all night
nice,
long
it's
for
awesome.
Beats Antique and Ataya and Bedtime Snack and Miss Mar.
Yeah,
So it was definitely I was feeling pretty inspired because, as you know,
awesome.
we've tried to do we've done a handful of bass shows over the years, and it can be more difficult to fill rooms. But I
Yeah,
really felt those 400 people really connecting, and we were
Nice.
throwing out lots of flyers for a physical pre-release for people for your
Yeah,
show as well.
perfect.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can fill the Waverly up on the
Yeah.
is it April 10th or 11th? 10th, April
The
10th.
10th, I
We'll
think.
we'll put
Yeah,
we'll put
sorry.
all the stuff we've talked about. We'll put into the show notes, so
April 10th, April 10th.
it'll
Yeah.
all be down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hey Jordan, is there anything else that is exciting and at the front of your mind right now that we haven't talked about, or something we didn't cover that you think we should cover really quick before we call this one?
I don't think so. No, I'm just excited. It was a bit of a slow summer last summer for me. I got married at the end of the summer, so I kind of took the summer off from festivals and everything, and so I'm excited to just kind of get out and do some more shows again this year. Get to a couple festivals. Just announced Future Forest out in New Brunswick. Excited to get back out there, and yeah, I've just been working on lots of music, so I'm really excited to share it all with everybody, and yeah, I think this tour is going to be really special.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time. We're also excited that you're going to be joining us for Pacina Bay as well.
Yeah, yeah, there we go.
And yeah, well, thank you very much for your time, Jordan. We look forward to seeing you for the upcoming show at the Waverly. And
Totally.
all the power to you, man. And deep thanks from everyone at the Space Makers Network and people on Vancouver Island, fellow creatives who appreciate people working hard to raise the bar and build the make the pie bigger here on Vancouver Island. So we salute you, and we're very grateful for that.
Well, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all your support as always. And yeah, taking the time to chat with me today. And yeah,
Great.
perfect. Okay,
Take
well, we'll
care,
see
man.
you soon here at the Waverly.
Sure will.
Okay, take care, Ben.
Take care, Jordan.